Ukrainian forces attacked the enemy using captured weapons fired at Russian targets near the town of Bakhmut, as fighting continued in an area Moscow is trying hard to take. Russia has repeatedly launched attacks on Bakhmut near the Donetsk region, but has been pushed back with what Kyiv says are heavy losses. A few days ago there was a very fierce battle between Ukrainian troops and Russian mercenaries. There were a lot of them, both people and tanks and other equipment. Reuters journalists saw a captured Russian T-80 tank, now controlled by Ukrainian crews, firing at targets outside Bakhmut. Ukraine's military says both were seized and took months to be refitted. The 8-wheel Nonok, commanded by Magog, has a 120mm mortar capable of firing a maximum of 10 rounds per minute. They left us this gift, and it has high, very high, and it now works against them. It helps us push them away. Meanwhile, Russian and Ukrainian troops exchanged heavy artillery fire at several locations, officials in both countries said, as Russian-appointed officials continue to evacuate people from the west bank of the river amid increasing Ukrainian counterattacks. Ukraine's national network operator, meanwhile, said it would increase the rolling blackouts in Kyiv and 7 other regions, as the country's national network remained badly damaged by Russian airstrikes for weeks. Ukraine's president said the heaviest fighting of the last week was in the vicinity of Bakhmut and Soledar in Donetsk, and that Ukrainian troops were holding their positions there and elsewhere. He also spoke of good gains in the south, praising the infantry and artillery brigades for crushing the enemy. Ukrainian forces have been carrying out a slow and gradual counter-offensive in the southern Kherson region for weeks, moving ever closer to a direct threat. The buildup of Russian powers in Belarus is purportedly essential for an arrangement by Moscow to set the circumstances for a re-established intrusion of northern Ukraine, perhaps focused on Kyiv. A US-based tank on Friday comes as the Belarusian resistance someplace far off. Banished in Shame advised Newsweek that endeavors to include Belarus all the more straightforwardly in Putin's intrusion will be met with obstruction and harm. Belarus has been utilized as an organizing post for Russia's attack of Ukraine, in spite of the fact that Minsk has kept away from direct support in the conflict. Nonetheless, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who depends on Vladimir Putin to remain in power following a 2020 political race broadly considered to be fake, has been trying the battle preparation of his nation's soldiers. The two chiefs met in Minsk on December 19th, bringing worries up in the West that Putin would compel Lukashenko to get all the more straightforwardly engaged with the conflict, particularly as Russian troopers and military hardware have been gathering close to the Belarusian line with Ukraine. The ISW said that Moscow had been taking a gander at another most hazardous strategy, MCDOA, since October, and that almost certainly a Russian development in Belarus flagged plans for a re-established hostile, as opposed to a transition to prepare troops. While there is no proof that Moscow was setting up a strike force in Belarus, and that one more maneuver into Ukraine from the neighbor of the two nations was far-fetched this colder time of year, the US think tank said on Friday that such a move by Vladimir Putin was plausible, that should be viewed in a serious way. Putin is to meet with Lukashenko in St. Petersburg on December 26th and 27 of the Republic of Free States CIS, a Moscow-drove gathering of post-Soviet nations. These discussions are supposed to advance the Russian data activity around the MDCOA regardless of whether it straightforwardly supports arrangements for it, the ISW said. This activity was intended to lay out the believability of the MCDOA and follows the Russian Protection Service's declaration that it has a field clinic in Belarus, which could flag arrangements for battle. Franek Vyakorka, Bourse Political Guide to Belarusian Resistance Pioneer Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, who is situated in Poland, let Newsweek know that the opportunity of direct cooperation of Belarus in Putin's attack remains extremely low. He said Lukashenko will keep on giving runways, emergency clinics, region, UL, and political help for Russia, yet he will do all that could be within reach to keep away from the immediate contribution of Belarusian soldiers. There were insufficient Russian soldiers or hardware to propose an up-and-coming assault on Ukraine from Belarus, however they will actually want to send in a couple of months. We as fair powers are attempting to connect with individuals in obstruction, Vyakorka said, as he depicted how there had been an increment of Belarusian sectarian assaults on Russian targets, for example, rail lines on Belarusian area that permitted the conveyance of Moscow's tactical supplies.